Welcome back to the Quick Focus Blueprint program. I am your focus coach, Jim Quick, and how is your focus? It's outstanding and it's super. And the goal here is not for it to be perfect. No, none of us are perfect, but you're doing the work. And that's what I really appreciate. You're showing up every single day. I enjoy reading your comments because practice makes progress. So the goal is not perfection, it's to make daily progress. A little bit each time adds up to a whole lot. And today I'm really excited. I'm always really excited about teaching this and sharing with you. But because for the very first time, we have a guest here, a guest expert that came in just to help you to improve your focus. And he's world class and he's one of my coaches. And I do believe some of the best coaches and teachers are the best students. And so I have a number of coaches and he is on the top of my list for high elite mental performance. And his name is Dr. Michael Bruce. He's the author of The Power of When. He's also America's sleep doctor. He's my sleep doctor. And so he's also keynoted our Quick Brain Conference. And so many of you might be familiar with him either on our stage or if you're in our mastermind. He's also guest presented there. He's also been a guest on our podcast. And so I wanted to bring him here today with you to help you, specifically your focus on the time you spend around learning something new and boosting your memory. Because it's not just about, there's lots of material out there on how to do something or what to do or even why to do something, but very little is out there on the power of when to do something, because you could be doing the right things at the wrong time and you won't get the result. And so that's what we're going to be talking about today. So thanks for being here, Dr. Michael Bruce.
Thanks, Jim. I'm excited to be here. I love the fact that I'm going to be part of this. I love it that I'm one of the only guys you're bringing in, so this is fantastic. And I'm excited to teach everybody out there how to learn something new.
Yeah, and this is a very elite group of people right now. They're going through our Quick Focus Blueprint program, which is a 30-day program to triple your focus. The conversation that I wanted to have with you for them today is to jumpstart their focus around learning and memory. So we're looking for those hacks. So where do we start?
Well, so in my book, The Power of When, one of the things that we were able to discover looking through the research is that there are actually special times of day where it's much easier to learn something new. Now, this is going to depend upon something called your chronotype. You may have heard Jim talk about this before, but very briefly, we know that there are early birds out there. I call them lions. We know that there are people who are generally like everybody else, go to bed at roughly the same time everybody does and wake up at the same time. I call them bears. There are night people like myself who I call wolves, and then there are problem sleepers, insomnia, and who I call dolphins. So thinking about those categories, think about which one you might be in. And if you don't know, you can certainly go and check out my quiz at thepowerofwhenquiz.com. And then let's talk about learning. So learning is actually a lot like sleeping. There is actually a rhythm to learning, right? There's actually, believe it or not, the data would suggest that there's a U-shaped curve. That actually helps people figure that out. Peaks and valleys, just like body temperature or things like that. And what psychologists have found that anything new, language, developmental skills, stuff like that, is most efficiently done with a period of acquisition, followed by a period of rest, followed by more acquisition. That's not what traditional teachers might have you believe. They think that it's sort of a linear process, but we know that we've got to take breaks. We know that we've got to give our brain a rest, a chance to digest all of that great information. And so we know that there is actually a basic learning rhythm. And so what it is it's a curve of cognitive performance, and it follows a very predictable pattern. So most people learn, their first learning time during the day is between about 10 a.m. and about 1:30. We all know that we have a tendency to get tired around 1:30 in the afternoon, and we'll talk about why in just a second. But between 10 and 1 is a prime learning time. Okay, it's definitely something that you can fall into. You can use that time. I tell people, get on your phone and put into your schedule, into your calendar, learning time, because this is when you're going to learn. Whether it's listening to podcasts that Jim's put out, whether it's understanding more about your work, your social world, whatever it happens to be, that is your learning time. And here's the good news, is it's not the only time of day that that's going to happen. We also know there's kind of a second learning time that pops up somewhere between about 4 and probably about 7, 8 o'clock at night, depending upon what it is that's going on in your life. So there's two really main areas to learn something. And I don't want you to worry that you're going to be struggling to take in new information or things like that. This is actually the time that your brain wants that stuff. It's not going to be locking and loading it. That actually happens during REM sleep late at night while you're asleep. But this is the time to get new information in and learn something new. Now, of course, if you're an early bird, maybe you rotate that time up by an hour or two. Or if you're a night owl like me, you rotate that time down by an hour or two. So this is very individual, but you can figure it out. Just move that time around. So remember, between 10 and 2 is your first big learning time, or 10 to 1:30. And then your second one is from 4 to about 7, 7:30.
So does that mean that people should generally avoid that period, like right after lunch between 2 and 4?
For learning, yes, but for creativity, no. So here's an interesting fact, is we know that we are most creative during what I call our times of groggy greatness, right? So groggy greatness is when you're a little distracted, you're a little tired, and you come up with that amazing idea. Let's be honest, how many of you out there have been in the shower, going for a run, or doing something where you had that big idea? I'm willing to bet you that it was during a time when probably between 1 and 3 in the afternoon, or even late in the evening when you hit that groggy greatness time. That's when creativity hits. Learning is actually a little bit earlier and a little bit later.
Fantastic. And that thing of it that you said about the shower is absolutely true. I come up with my best ideas and my sharpest inspirations there. And I took actually 6 showers this morning just to prepare for this this session with us. Okay, so where do we go from there? We're talking about learning times, and then we're also talking about, besides learning, we're talking about memory.
We are. And you know what? It's interesting because I'm glad to make this bridge, if you will, because when we're talking about sleep, being the sleep doctor, I'm always going to bring up sleep. We know that when we're sleep deprived, it's very difficult to learn and it's very difficult to memorize. So let's use sleep deprivation to help bridge that gap for us between learning something new and memorization. So absolutely positively, the data is ridiculous. If you are sleep deprived, you are not going to be able to be on your game at your best. So first of all, remember, if you want to avoid being sleep deprived, you need to figure out what your bedtime is. So very quickly, I'm going to give you a bedtime calculator. This is something that you can do right now and figure this out and use it for the rest of this 30-day program. So number 1 is, what is your socially determined wake-up time? So for most of us, it's kids going off to school, getting ready for work, what have you. Next, you want to count backwards 7.5 hours. Where on earth did I come up with 7.5 hours? The average sleep cycle is 90 minutes long. The average person has 5 sleep cycles. 5 times 90 is 450 minutes. Divided by 60 gives us 7.5 hours. So that's where I came up with it. So let's do the math. Let's say you wake up at 6:30. Your new bedtime is 11 o'clock. I can't count the number of patients who come to me and they say, Dr. Bruce, I was going to get in bed at 9. I was going to get in bed at 10. And I looked up and it was midnight, right? They lose track of time. They're binge watching TV. They're watching Game of Thrones, playing Candy Crush, all these other crazy things that are distractions. I want everybody out there to look at their wake up time, count back 7 hours, and set an alarm on their phone to remind them that it's time to get to bed. Because sleep deprivation will affect your ability to learn and it will affect your ability to memorize. But talking about memory, it's important to realize that in fact, there are actually different aspects to memory. The first one is acquisition, right? So when do you acquire that information? The good news is there doesn't appear to be a particular time of day when acquisition is at its highest. Although the times that you're learning are certainly the times that you're going to be acquiring a tremendous amount of information. It's the consolidation and the recall that actually have very specific times. So when you're looking at consolidation, a couple of things that you kind of want to think about, but a period of sleep immediately after learning a new skill actually encourages growth of brain synapses. So if you've just read through something that was incredible, that was life transforming, that was something that you really want to lock away, take a nap. Okay, because lock that stuff in, because remember, that's where we get our recall, is from that lock-in. And where does that lock-in occur? It actually occurs during REM sleep. I know we're talking about a lot of sleep things here, but remember, REM sleep is your dream sleep, but it's also your memory sleep. This is the time when you move information from your short-term memory to your long-term memory. This is when you actually take all that information and you create little joints between pieces of information so you can connect those two. And when you're making those memorial connections, that's what we think dreams are. So when you take a piece of information that you got in new and you connect it to a piece of information that was old and in your head, you now have that in your dream state, and that's what helps lock and load it into your memory.
So you could confirm that the people who are pulling all-nighters at school or before a big meeting the night before and they're not sleeping, it's actually detrimental.
It's probably the single worst thing that a person could do is pull an all-nighter. Now, let's say you're in a jam, right? And you didn't study, it's the night before the exam, you got the big presentation, what are you going to do? Here's a little quick hack. Remember, most people sleep in 90-minute segments. Go ahead and get 2 to 3 90-minute segments. Don't try to push yourself until 3 o'clock in the morning because the information's not going to flow. Get yourself enough information in your head, then take 3 of these 90-minute segment naps, and then wake up and then hit the books again. You'll be surprised because that other stuff that you learned early in the night will be locked in and then you're ready to roll.
I love that. I love that so much.
We're talking brain hacks for memory here with the Sleep Doctor.
This has been so valuable, Dr. Bruce. What are the actions right now that you recommend everyone in the Quick Focus Blueprint program take?
So step number 1 is figure out what your bedtime needs to be. Remember, use that bedtime calculator. The socially determined wake-up time, minus 7.5 hours. Start there. You'll be surprised at how effective it is. Remember, hit your calendar and give yourself an alarm of when to go to sleep. That's a key factor. A lot of people don't do that and their night gets away from them. So step number 1, figure out your bedtime. Step number 2, lock and load it into your calendar. Step number 3 has to do with sleeping in 90-minute segments. We know that you're going to retain information and you're going to get it locked and loaded a lot better. So if you've got a lot of information that you've got to get down, get a reasonable amount in, maybe 45 minutes to an hour or so, then maybe even take a quick 15 to 20 minute nap, lock that information in, wake up, and keep going.
And I loved your other tip also about scheduling learning times. Something from like 10 a.m. to 1 p.m., maybe,
that's right.
Maybe 4 p.m. to 7 p.m.
Exactly.
And because if people don't schedule it, we've talked about this in this program, then it never happens.
And that I'm as guilty of that as anybody. And so I totally agree, Jim. Absolutely, positively. Catch the schedule, know when your learning times are, and then learn away.
And then what I want everyone to do right now is in the comments section, I want you to do this. I want you to go, aren't you curious a little bit what your chronotype is? Are you a lion or a bear or a dolphin or a wolf? Go to thepowerofwhenquiz.com. It's a free assessment, thepowerofwhenquiz.com. Take the assessment and then come back to this lesson and put in the comments what animal, what chronotype you are so we can get an idea of our community. It's a pretty wild community.
Absolutely. I'm looking forward to checking it out. And I'll definitely pop in there and say hello to everybody every once in a while as well.
Thank you so much for being here, Dr. Bruce.
Thanks for having me, Jim.